Manchester Metropolitan University. So can I just ask you a few sort of very bare questions? Why do you want to sell the land?
Well, the university is a good citizen in Manchester. The City Council have approached the university and said that this suburban site has the opportunity to be able to address Manchester's very acute needs for housing. And as a university, we've consolidated a number of sites, not just this one, but over a longer period of time, so that we're much more of a city centre university.
But to do that, you would have to sell Ryebank Fields.
No, we wouldn't. We don't have to sell it in order to do those things. But any proceeds that we'd make from selling this unused asset that the university's got would be, for the betterment of the rest of our campus.
So it's an unused asset for the university, but what seems to be coming across that it's a very used asset for the local community. That's come across quite strongly.
Yeah.
So what stage is the process at the moment?
We published a development framework with Manchester City Council. That's now a material consideration, and as part of that, we've done a number of ground investigation works to work out whether the land is suitable. We've employed archaeologists, tree specialists, wildlife specialists, ecologists, and of course people who are interested in property development opportunities and assessing the land like that. People who incidentally are usually used to examining the land that would be for a chemical works or a factory. People who would call themselves brownfield land specialists. Now, we are not maintaining that this is a brownfield site.
No, because it has been designated, it's been identified as a greenfield site.
That's
it's
right.
not brownfield. Yeah.
We've never contested that. I've heard the argument that we should to use someone else's phrase, hand it back to the City Council. What I'd say in response to that is, if we handed it back to the City Council, I don't think that they would necessarily go through the same process that we've gone through to put forward a development framework that builds into that a requirement to address multiple housing needs, which is important, but also really, I think, to the listeners of your programme who'd be interested, is preserve the natural environments that are here, that should be enhanced. The badger setts over as we're speaking. I know it's radio so people can't see, but there's badger setts, there's bat nests, there's all sorts of other wildlife, and it should enhance the local community of Chorlton and Stretford, which it sits alongside, and enhances the existence of the Nico Ditch, an archaeological presence in the middle of it, which I know you've spoken about. And the reason why we've done such an extensive amount of survey work is exactly to understand what is here, in order that we can bring this into greater use, yes, for housing, but also that in itself will make the housing much more attractive and part of this suburban environment, which is...
Doesn't the community then lose what this place is to them, which is a place for socialisation, for exercise, relaxing, de-stressing, enjoying nature, listening to the birds? They would lose that.
It is a well-used dog walking site, but let's not also forget that it's next to the largest park in Trafford. Longford Park, over to my left as I'm speaking, is the largest park in Trafford, and we've got the opportunity, with any proceeds that could be accrued from developing this land with a private developer, to actually enhance the way in which this whole local area merges into in a much neater way with Longford Park. Now, every planning application in every part of this country is contested by somebody. Somebody doesn't want extra traffic, they don't want extra houses in their backyard, they're concerned about the value of the house. I totally respect that. I totally do.
Here, the strength seems to be they're concerned about losing a green lung in this part of the city, and again, this wildlife
a green lung next
countryside.
To the largest park in Trafford.
Well, all the more reason why you need it then.
And an opportunity to manage the trees better, to manage the landscape better, and actually the opportunity potentially to plant even more trees. We're not planning to concrete over all of this and chop every tree down. Far from it.
Well, what will you do with the trees? Because I'm seeing beautiful oaks, the ones that are planted in the millennium. That amazing aspen tree collection down at the far end.
Trees. I've used this phrase a couple of times, a material consideration now. Any planning application, any developer has to take the existence of the trees on all parts of this site into consideration and use them. And if they're designated to be protected, then they'll have to be built around. Nobody wants to chop down something that planning law will say you must protect those trees. But, it's a city. Everybody who's bought a house in this area, everybody who lives here, I know they appreciate the parkland environment that they've got, but it's Manchester. It's a growing city, and there's an enormous demand for housing and development.
Of course there is. We see this story happening everywhere.
Yeah.
But when you do have a place like this, which is quite unique in that this piece of wild landscape has managed to survive in the development of Manchester, does that not make it all the more special?
It makes it all the more important to enhance what's here, and that any development should be sensitive to that. Completely agree with you.
Yeah. In talking to the campaigners, you can very much feel their passion and their connectedness to this wild space in very nearly the heart of Manchester. But I'm with Dr. Rebecca Taylor now of the University of Manchester. And Rebecca, you've been involved in researching the idea of the importance, but particularly the value of open spaces like this. Tell me a little bit about that. Help me understand that better.
I was given an opportunity to be a researcher on the Gaia project, which is quite convoluted, but it's the green infrastructure and health and well-being influences on an ageing population. So we, as quite a big research group across many different disciplines, came together, and over the course of 3 years, of the last year I've been more directly involved, but they've been researching non-monetary values of green space and what the non-monetary value is of and to people of green and blue space.
Green being this, what's blue?
Yes, so canals, rivers, right. Yeah. And there are 10 dimensions to well-being, but what some of those 10 dimensions of well-being are a social connection, a connectedness to nature, an ability to get out and be physical in your environment. And those three things, to be quite frank, were the three that really rose to the surface out of the research we were doing. And what people turned around and said was that, I could give you a couple of examples where one participant used benches quite literally as benchmarks to recovery and recuperation after a major operation in hospital. And if these spaces can provide healing for people who have undergone major surgeries or whatever, then they are also providing so much more for so many other people. But it does go undiscovered. Perhaps it's quite a subtle way of recognising the value of the green space.
I understand this idea of the benefit of a connectedness with nature. I understand that. I've been involved in that for years. I just get it. What you have now is a professional document brought together by a broad spectrum of people to prove it and to be able to hand to, for example, campaign groups or to developers. That is what you have now.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah.
You can't ignore this.
Well, and another thing they can't ignore is this key question that all of them are asking right now, which is, what is their civic duty? So any developer or organisation within a city centre particularly has that duty of care. At the moment, what we're suffering with some of the development plans and the frameworks are they're almost appeasing, and they're kind of saying, yeah, we'll put 10 trees around our building. Of course we'll plant 10 trees. Of course we'll provide some green space. But what the definition of green space is pretty, loose, especially for developments and developers. So again, we need these reports to really start to say it's the people who are telling you what this green space is that we need to be listening to. And it might not be, trees are really important, but it might be that the local community aren't necessarily asking for a park and trees. They're actually asking for growing space. They're actually asking for wild space. They're actually asking for places you can go to listen and spend time with birds and nature and provide places for biodiversity and perhaps urban agriculture.
Just as we're standing here, Rebecca, look high in the sky. That vast chevron of birds in flight.
Oh, it's beautiful,
Isn't it? Where are they heading? Where do they want to
And you see, it's because
land?
you've got the scale of that sky to see it.
Yeah.
You haven't got something built in front of you.
Yes, it
You can
blocks
actually-
it.
No.
or gets in their
see
way.
it. Yeah.
Oh, that's really lovely. Which path shall we follow? There's lots of them. Oh, I love it. You just walk into it. Even the bare stems of the aspen, they lean in towards us. And it's almost like walking through a natural triangle.
It's a tunnel, isn't
Yes.
it? It's a tunnel. And in the summer, when the leaves are out, because aspens, the leaves blow around in the wind, and it's like walking through a thunderstorm, because you can hear all this susurrating, is that the word, above you. And it sounds like rain, but of course it's bone dry.
And then we come back out into the open again. You can see the tunnel I've walked through. It's lovely. I've just joined up with Steve Silver again in the far corner of the park. And this is a particular favourite place of yours, Steve?
This is my favourite plantation or grove of oak trees. This area used to be completely waterlogged. So I thought, well, if I plant some trees here, it will suck up some of the water. And also, because it was at the end of two roads that have nothing at the end of them, it was extremely windy.
It's like
And
a
I thought,
wind tunnel
It
almost.
is a wind tunnel. So I thought, well, if I plant them in a circle, they'll protect one another from the wind.
Really lovely. And actually at this corner we can get a glimpse into what is the municipal park.
That's Longford Park,
and, you know, well-kept lawn grass out
Yeah.
there. And again, lots of trees, but you can see the contrast between this
Yeah.
wilder space
Yeah.
and that
In the
more
summer, of course,
cultivated.
the vegetation here comes up to waist height, so you know it's a lovely sort of environment for animals. I mean, we used to get hedgehogs and things, but fewer now.
So you'd really miss this place if it wasn't here.
I would, yeah. I told my daughter when she was very young, I said, well, it's your job, if these trees are still here when I'm gone, try and get this name Silverswood.
Oh, nice.
So that would be my legacy.